Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon to talk about community champion programs for our April 2022 tug, also our first tug of the year, so that's extra exciting as well. We've got myself, Charlotte from Lloyds Banking Group, Amy from Jaguar Land Rover, and Neil from JLL, all the J's, all the three-letter acronyms, all here together, and we're really excited to be joined by another three-letter acronym, Sarah from the NHS, who is here to talk to us about the amazing Analyst X program that she organises, and generally about community champions in general. So as you can see on the screen, we've got Menti up, so menti.com, use the code, give us a like to let us know you're here. Obviously, you've had a few technical issues, so we are expecting a few people to join as we go along, so we'll see. But for now, let's just get started so we don't have to eat into any more time that we are here to share. Brilliant. So on the Menti, if you just go to the next slide, if you could show us a mood of an emoji of your mood right now. So where it says enter a word, just enter a little emoji to show how you are feeling today. There's been a recent emoji update though, so I'm sure there's going to be lots of new ones to be seen. Oh, one of those is so new, it hasn't even been able to come through. Like a clown, loving that, whoever that is. But yeah, mind blown, curious, feels like we are setting up for good vibes and good vibes only. So yeah, awesome. I will give that another 5 seconds. Banana as well, it's like you slipped up in the vortex for someone that hasn't managed to make it through. Awesome. So the next question is around your organization. Oh no, what city are you joining us from? So where have you traveled through the internet time map to get here today? You don't live in a city, just the city nearest you. Nice. A few Londoners in the house. For those who haven't been to a CD Tug before, we are very kind of cross Europe, sometimes have a few Americans join us as well, because there's not, London's not the hub, or Edinburgh's not the hub of community champions, so it's really just everyone from everywhere, and making sure that we can all collaborate as much as possible. Formed during 2020, so we have always been virtual, but who knows, maybe we'll come face to face in the future, who knows. Cool, and then the final question is just around, does your organization have data champions, and how would you sit if they did? So no, we don't have any data champions, never heard of it, no one wants to know about it. No, not officially. We do have some informal data champs. Yep, I'm one informally. Or yes, I'm trying to become one formally. So we have them and I am one. Okay, looks like the organizations are not totally loving the formal data champions, but that is exactly why we are here to discuss all of these bits and hear from Sarah, our data champion expert, on everything champion based. So without much further ado, let's chat with Sarah. Surprise. So yeah, if I stop sharing my screen, Sarah, do you want to start sharing and introduce yourself a bit more and everything else?
Yeah, I will introduce myself before I start sharing my screen, because then we can actually see each other and that's much nicer. So hello everybody, my name is Sarah Blundell. I am the lead for analytical development in NHS England and Improvement. For those of you who are not familiar with how the healthcare service is set up, NHS England is the national body of the NHS, as in we are the very annoying people that are responsible for such things as the NHS app. running out and rolling out vaccination programs, which you might be familiar with, amongst a few other things. My day job, is to be lead for analytical development. So my focus is, how do I make data and analytics in health and care one of the best places to work as a data professional? I want to be out there competing and stealing all the best talent to come and work in health and care, because, no offense, we have the best data. You can keep your banking data. Ours is better. It really is. We have all the cool stuff, and we're slowly getting all the cool toys. And it's just a fantastic place to work if you are someone that likes working with data, interesting problems that will impact on you, your life, your family. Everybody who is based in the UK who uses the NHS has a NHS story. And it is also somewhere for people that, if you like using your skills to make a difference, it's a great. So there you go. There's a career pitch for anyone who might be interested in joining. But I'm not here today to talk about how fantastic it is to work in the NHS. I'm here today to talk to you about Analyst X, which is one of the many reasons it's cool to work where I am. So I'm gonna share my screen and hope this works, because I am used to using Google. I am used to using Teams, but I am not used to using Zoom. So let us hope that this works. Can everyone see a front slide that says the Analyst X experience?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. So Analyst X, again, very similar to this group, has not been around that long. It has been around just 2 years, just over 2 years. And it basically is a community of practice that was established that is really driving and leading this momentum for like data-driven and evidence-based decision making. And we're doing that through sharing, learning across what could typically be closed as traditional hard boundaries between organizations in health and care. Traditionally, it's been quite challenging to get people from different organizations who've got very focused on their own individual problems to then take a look up and go, actually, we could solve so many of these problems by sharing what we're doing at an earlier stage and by providing that support and learning across those typical organization and geographical boundaries. And the reason for that obviously we had this step change, unsurprising enough, was the pandemic. Now, every business everywhere was impacted by the pandemic, but I think everyone will agree my business was probably impacted by the pandemic a little bit more than everybody else's. And as a result, in sort of data and analytics, there was a massive shift, because we had staff that would have been doing their typical BAU style work. They'll have their particular areas, their particular expertise, and they're working in that. Suddenly people are being lifted and shifted to go and support COVID cells, but we've still got the day-to-day business of the NHS to run. So other people are then being brought in to then cover and try and keep the reporting going, or to sort of take up and develop skills that, in a very short period of time, that they wouldn't have been expected to do at that point in their career journey. So one of the key things we had really on in this area was, actually, we need to have a collaboration place, because the only way this is going to work is if actually we get so much better and we supercharge sharing our knowledge and experience. And that's where Analyst X was born. It was intended to be a community for about 50 people originally, which would be a place where we could come together, share the models and the forecasting and the techniques that we're using, and get people together, and they could talk about it, so we could learn from each other, so we could use our own knowledges and experience to refine what we were doing and not waste time duplicating work that somebody else is already doing. And that's where it came from. But of course, like with any good idea, once people start getting involved, it escalates really, really quickly. And so it quickly came from being a place where we're going to bring our models together and start showing and telling what we're doing, to a community of 17,000 people. Yes, just let that settle in. 17,000 people. Now, what we then ended up doing was expanding the community as the community out there needed. So we expanded from coming together to share models and actual pieces of analytics, although that is still a very much a core piece of our work. People are coming to us, and we've got this forum, and people are asking us loads of questions about how do I get hold of this data and this data and this data, and what do I do with it when I've got hold of it? What's all the governance around it? So we expanded out the guidance and the knowledge sharing around that, getting people to come on and answer those questions, but then actually pulling together, how do you access COVID data source? How do you access other people's data, the publicly held data that's out there, that suddenly people who've never needed to probably access some of these data sets are suddenly being, I need to find information about this because my role has changed and the type of work I'm doing is changing. As you can see, over 1,000 discussion forum threads have and we stopped counting after we hit 1,000. So there's probably far more after that. Evidence reviews we were asked to undertake. So we sort of expanded it around that as where the needs came in. And I'm in this community because I basically am responsible for communities, networks, and learning. So under that area, that basically is the analytical huddle. So much like we're doing today, coming together and sharing and running events. We run them weekly, and we have sort of what we would consider to be our huddle, which is our panel discussion, sort of high level things that basically run once a month. And then we have things like mini huddles, which tend to be then on specific, maybe an analytical topic or a specific case study of a piece of work. And they're like 45 minutes long. And we've been running these pretty much since April 2020 on a weekly basis. I think we take a couple of weeks off for Christmas, and that's pretty much it. And they're fantastically well attended, massive diverse range of topics, etc., that are covered. Obviously, quite a lot of them COVID focused, but generally massive amount of things, all the way through to we're now starting to develop specialist micro communities that sit under the Analyst X umbrella, because when you've got so much going on, actually what people then do is they start coalescing around particular issues or particular ideas. So we've had 3 micro communities that have launched basically in the last 6 months, one around data visualization, one that started a while back actually specifically around machine learning and has now expanded to being a data science community, and lastly one around evaluation, sort of an evidence and research community of practice. But we're expanding, we've got additional communities we're bringing on board around data engineering, around process mining, around privacy and ethics, just as examples that will basically be launching in the next few months. And then lastly, around learning, and that's my passion. I've always been an advocate of lifelong learning. And so what we then developed was something called the Analytics Learning Exchange, which basically was signposting people, because no one had any time in the pandemic to go on training courses. And so it was very much around, where do we help people access on-demand material that can get them up to speed quickly for an introduction to a topic. And we were really lucky in this work. And this is sort of what Analyst X sort of looks like. It doesn't look particularly sexy because, I'll be honest, none of us are really web developers. It's all about the content rather than the look. And, we were really lucky in that when we were doing this work, we were getting loads of people from all the partners that we've been working with and partners that they introduced us to, who came along and said, we want to help the NHS. We recognize that actually you're under immense amount of pressure here, and we've got all this expertise. Let us come on board and let us help you, help us. But we needed a way of then being able to connect those offers of help up with people who actually needed help, and Analyst X enabled us as a means to do that. Sort of, it sounds terrible. It's not really blind date, but it was a bit of a, it did feel a bit like at one point we were a date matching service connecting these people up. But these partners have stuck with us and expanded. We've now got 44 strategic partners who support the Analyst X community to a sliding scale of involvement. We have from like the most involved scale, up there is very much Tableau and Microsoft. Tableau have really supported us in providing a lot of expertise around how to set a community of practice up, how to run one, how to set a champions program up, which I'm going to sort of come on to mention in a minute. And then Microsoft have been fantastic about supplying of free training. So in the NHS, we get all free Microsoft training and certifications and that stuff. It's all part of a deal they have with the Department of Health, which is great because You know, a lot of people in lots of parts of the NHS really don't have money to send people on expensive training courses, or don't have the time. So it's been a really interesting, and they've been able to bring a flavour that we wouldn't have had in this community if we hadn't had that sort of outsider style buy-in and bringing in their expertise and knowledge. As I said, there's a range of things that obviously we do. In particular, in Analyst X, we have our sub communities, we have learning and development blogs, which I push out, our Analyst X learning exchange. We've got a big presence now on social media. Well, big for us in the NHS, in that we're linked on LinkedIn and Twitter, and we now do have our own YouTube page. I'll be honest, there's only probably about 4 things on there, but there is a particularly good presentation from Sumya Gray, which is worth going and looking at. But obviously, so much more around the content is things that are being driven by the community. It's a place for people to come and share their best practice and their case studies. It's a place for people to ask questions and get answers, or reach out to people who have shared interests in them and sort of create those little sub communities together. And it's a place where we can obviously push out our multimedia style content in our huddles and our podcasts and all manner of other things. And it is also the place where we have been drawing on champions from the community for the community. So we've been running our champions program for a little over a year now. And I'll be honest, it's been one of the biggest challenges we've had, in that we've got this massive community, but they've got very divergent needs. And they're also people coming from very, very different places and areas of their background. So what we did was sort of set sort of a minimum expectation of what a role of a champion would be. We expect them to play an active role in contributing to our community, but we let the champion decide what that role would be. So it could be that they're getting involved in helping to set up these micro communities because they have such a specialist subject matter expertise, an area in this, and they're already doing this work and they want a place to be able to share this work and support it. Or they're people that are coming on board and actually going, do you know what, we've been doing Hexi time campaigns, or people that have been prepared to actually, I'm quite happy to have one-to-one sessions with people to share my expertise and knowledge, all the way around to I'm coming on board and I've got a particular set of skills in web optimization. Would you like me to sit down and review the Analyst X community and provide you some feedback? So we've got a real range of types of roles that people could contribute into the Analyst X community, all the way through to people going, I've got a really great network of people that I could push this out to. I could come and present for you. I could talk about how great Analyst X is. So saying it's been very much the role of the champion has been dictated by the special interests of the champion. We do have like entry requirements for the amount of time commitment, and this is where it then links into, it's fine with bringing people in from different backgrounds, but we do need to get that sort of sign up. So some people who have been running their own businesses, because we've basically said we're not putting a limit on who can come in. It is a membership community, but so you have to have some interest in data and analytics in health and care, because that's where we're applying it. But we've got people then who run their own businesses, who work in the private sector, but happen to then work a lot with health clients. And so therefore they're going, well, I've built up this knowledge about healthcare. This is something I'm prepared to do in my own time, and I'll have a very specific role. And then you've got other people who actually are working in health, who then we're going, right, well, if you're going to be doing 2 hours per week, and if it's going to be part of your actual, daily role, day-to-day role, then we really sort of need to get your line manager okaying to bring that in. And most people have been absolutely fine with that. What we shifted from is we did like this big campaign and big launch, etc., for the champions program, with this idea that we were actually going to then we were going to hit 100 champions in the first year. We were going to take on 25 champions a quarter. And we've really learned in that first intake that was a really bad idea. So much about this and about what you get from your champions is about development of relationships and getting them to have a role in Analyst X that they've carved out. So we switched from this, big campaign, this sort of thing, into actually we're going to go for smaller cohorts. We're going to move from a standard, let's bring everything together for a big group monthly meeting, into we're now assigning you a relationship manager who's part of the core team from Analyst X, who can then link you up with initiatives that we're doing, who can then almost like sit down with you right at the beginning of your journey. We do actually have a pro forma to go through what you're wanting to get out of this. What can you contribute? But also, how can we support you on your journey? Because most people join this from a perspective of, I've got this thing to give. And we want to also make it a two-way street of, well, you've got this thing to give, but how can then we help you achieve where you want to go? So it might be that, people are joining this community because actually they're really looking at developing and improving like their stakeholder experience, because it's not something in their day-to-day analytical role they're getting a chance to do. And this is a way for them of engaging with a broader range of people and learning about a broader range of people and how they then can work with them to a range of things. So it's very much that developing that relationship, because we do expect our champions to come on board for a 12-month period. So we do allow them to have peaks and troughs of activity and improvement. So although we say 2 hours per week commitment, what they might do, some of them is have a particular period of time for a couple of weeks that they're working on Analyst X projects, like a sprint, and then they get some time off in lieu. So what we've done this time is we've then stripped it down to the idea of, instead of going out every quarter, we go out 3 times a year. And instead of, which is why we're sort of going from this idea of 100 per year to actually let's go for a third of that, and actually focus on getting really quality champions in, etc. And I think I'm going to stop there and start throwing it out for particular questions. This is just set the scene. So, oh, I hope I've stopped sharing. Have I?
You have. You're okay.
That's okay. Sorry, I said Zoom is just so odd. But I hope that's given you a good intro as to what Analyst X is. And
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
I
mean, not a question first, but just to say, it looks pretty amazing. The scale that you've been able to build the community up to in 1 to 2 years, supporting 17,000 people, is just amazing. So those of us who are wondering, well, how can we build this up to support a number a lot less than 17,000? What are we waiting for? I just got one question. I actually had 3 questions, and then you answered 2 of them as you were talking. So I was you obviously anticipated some of the questions I had, because I was particularly interested whether you had a sort of fixed number of champions and what happened when more came and more wanted to leave. But then when you spoke about aiming for 100 a year, and then having them on sort of 1 year fixed contracts, you know what I mean? That seemed to be a really good way of managing them. But the question that I still wanted to ask was, you mentioned that a lot are to do with micro communities, and I wasn't sure what sort of examples of micro communities might be.
Okay, so these are real special interest groups. So for example, we're a very broad data and analytics community. People are coming to us for a full range of things, but some people are coming to us for very, very specific things, as in they are really interested in developing their skills, say for example in data visualization. Let's take that. We work with Tableau. We have, not all of our analysts do that type of data viz on a day-to-day basis, but it is something, say they're interested in developing that skill. What we have a special interest data visualization sub community that sits under the analyst. So they get their own little page and area, their own sign up. They then run their own events on a 6-weekly basis. That'll be like a couple of hours when they run them, and that will then be show and tell. It will be an expert coming along, maybe from Interworks, maybe from Tableau, maybe from other softwares are available, etc., to basically do a bit of an expert demo of something. And there'll also be opportunities for people to sort of ask questions and do that sort of thing. So that's the sort of type of thing that a micro community would get up to, but it would also have its own like special discussion forum, or in cases for some of our stuff, we do have like a Python community that is under there as well. They have their own Slack channel that people join. So it's a way for people to reach out to that expert group outside of those types of meetings to ask questions of, I'm stuck on this, I need help on this, someone else, has anyone else got experience of doing X and Y? And it just brings that, you know, particular sub community together in a way that they might get lost in the broader 17,000 community. They might, you know, struggle to find each other.
And a kind of daft follow-up question, really, but does it work? I mean, because it's interesting to me that not only do you have the community, but you do have quite sort of specific targets. You know, the amount of there will be this amount of hours of activities, and there will be this many events, and et cetera, et cetera. And you know, it's lovely to think that would work.
Well, we're all voluntary, so like with anything, there's always a bit of give and take. But genuinely, those, you know, like with the Huddles events that run weekly, they organize these things with several you know, weeks in advance of what the content's going to be, because they have a relatively large pool. I mean, like the Python community had one of their events, I think they had 110 people came to their last one that they did, which is great, which was like their first, you know, they've got smaller groups that meet. But that's the sort of number they're getting, so that they've got enough people that are prepared to then come forward and show. I think it's always that getting to a critical mass. You've got enough people that you can have enough content that you can run something regularly enough, I think, is the challenge. Just growing it from that small core group. But when it came to micro communities, we did provide an infrastructure of what was the minimum we expected. So they had to have a steering group. They had to have a self-appointed lead. They had to have a vision of what they were trying to accomplish. So it just meant that it gave them a bit of structure in which to work, basically.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Amy's got her hand up.
Yeah.
Amy's, yes.
So I'm interested to know how much of the community's role is to kind of support those end users. So when people get stuck and have somebody to reach out to, versus kind of organizing events and knowledge share sessions and stuff like that. Do you have, so take Tableau, for example, is there also Tableau technical support, or is that all coming through the community and through the champions?
So because it's a bit of both. So we obviously have our peer-to-peer support through the community, but we also link up with our strategic partners to provide more structured support. So a good example will be we have like a centralized events calendar that will link up, say Interworks run a whole load of specialist webinars for the NHS. So we'll make sure they're advertised and promoted through our community. So our community, we then push them towards things that are already being set up to provide technical support for them. A good example from another software supplier, Alteryx, ran a whole load of like clinical drop-in sessions for our Analyst X community that people could sign up for, again, for people that are using that type of software. So it's one of those things, because it's voluntary, because no one's paying for anything, it's sort of working with our strategic partners to provide things for free that works for them, but also works for us, but trying to get as much of the support as we can from the community, because so many of the questions aren't necessarily technical questions. They're more about, how do I apply, I've got this particular problem with this particular type of data, and what's the best way of presenting that? So you know, or dealing with that technical issue. So cool. Hope that answered your question, Amy.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Charlotte?
Yeah, my question is, because this has like grown so quickly at such a scale and stuff, how do you think you survived without it? Like what were people doing beforehand? Because like that's the thing we see, like people are like, oh, I don't need to join, I don't need to be in a community because I can just ask my boss and they'll do it for me, or I'll like do this. Like, everyone's insular by nature, I tend to find, but this is like the opposite.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, NHS is famously bad at not sharing. I mean, it's one of the things, and I think this is one of the reasons why we were really keen to make sure that this pandemic did not go the way of any other previous, shall we say swine flu or any of those types of things that never had the same sort of impact. And I think that's the thing. It took something that revolutionary to shock everyone into changing practice, and this just happened to fall into place at the right time. I'm not saying we should always, to get up a community practice working, we need a pandemic, but there has to be a really strong motivator to get people to change, and that might be a big policy drive, or it might be a revolutionary boss who comes in and is going to change the way we work, move to a more data driven culture and get everyone involved. For us, managing and growing that community, I won't pretend it's not a challenge, because it literally went from starting it in the March, by the September we were at 10,000. It was very, very rapid growth, and it's meant we've had to have several like revisions and redrawing, and we're going to do the same thing again with the champions program. We're going to revise that to be champions and ambassadors, because we recognize we've got more people that want to do the ambassador role with a smaller commitment sort of thing. So I think being prepared to sort of change and iterate is sort of central to the success of what we've done. But similarly, getting past that organizational sort of knowledge sharing, we know how to do it, and I can just ask my boss. It's like with anything, once people go the community knowledge sharing route, they don't go back, because they suddenly realize, wait a minute, I don't just get one answer, I can get 5, and I can pick what's the best answer for mine. And it also becomes about, especially in data and analytics, I mean, I don't know how common this is in other areas of things, but in the NHS, the more senior you get, the less analytical work you have the chance to do. So actually, you lose out on the knowledge of what's the cutting edge that comes out. And therefore, having analysts at all levels who can then access people who are in that more specialist role, who can then go, oh, there's this new function that's come out on synthetic data that's come out of the US, this thing, and they then can push that out to that group. That means one person's got to do that research instead of it all over the place. So I think that people have seen the benefit for their own work and therefore won't go back, but getting that initial, there's got to be an initial hook. So I've done lots of like going out and talking to people, and for some people they'll come in because of the free learning material or the Microsoft courses, whatever it is, whatever hook gets them in, but you keep them in by making their life and their job easier.
And so I guess follow on to that, because that does answer my question, but it leads me on to another, which is we often see like lots of, I guess we call them guilds, which are, you know, like specialist niche groups getting together, whether that be people who want to do spatial analytics and that's all their vibe, or they want to do Python and they don't want to, you know, touch Tableau or anything. And we really struggle to bring them under that singular umbrella, because they kind of all want to have their community in their space. How, because you kind of said, oh, we have combined, you know, we've got our Python gang, we've got this gang, we've got that gang, like we can't get them all in the playground, all our gangs, because they're all currently in their own playgrounds ganging together.
Yeah.
How did you kind of bring them on that journey to kind of say, actually, let's all like hang in the same space, and, you know, we don't have to collaborate, but it would be cool to bump shoulders and question this and question
that? We made it easy for them. I think that was the thing. In that we already, the micro community we set up was machine learning. And that was our real let's experiment with this. So it was very much around, let's find that lightning rod pod person who's got an idea, let's find a core group of people around them that are really interested in working with this, let's getting them putting out exciting content on the session, and then let's attract them to it. I think so for us it's been very much around, we've got a model that you can easily fit into. Find your person, find your steering group, find your vision, build a page, get these types of events going. We'll help facilitate the comms and getting your message out. And I think that's the thing. we've just made it easier for people to sort of move under the Analyst X banner, because we take then a lot of the infrastructure elements off of them, and also we've got a captive audience of 17,000 people that we can push your broadcast, your invitations to. All communities of practice generally would like to add new members, so the only one we've adopted is the evaluation community of practice, because that already existed on its own. So we've adopted that. It's our, it's coming under our banner. All the other ones we sort of created from scratch. So for us, it was more of we had to do a bit of a wooing to them to get them involved. But again, for them, because again, it was another voluntary group, they were struggling with keeping the momentum of that group going. And so it was very much come under our banner and we'll help you do that. So all right.
I have one question that came from Tatiana on our Slack group, so I can ask that quickly if others are still thinking. And she asks, in particular, is there a way that you measure the success of your training efforts? Yeah.
That's a really...
It's one of these questions we're always asked, isn't it? Especially in things that aren't seen to be generating money. How do you quantify the success?
Okay, so that's a really, really good question. And it's something we've been flummoxed with slightly ourselves, because the way our site is set up, it's really hard for us to get a lot of like the web style stats that other areas would get, mainly because anyone signing in from an NHS or a thing is a secure account, so you can't actually like track where everybody is, because they're all coming in through a centralized private network. So we have a variety of ways we look at stuff. Some of which is literally around, for the training courses we are actually co-running, we obviously have then the sign up stuff. So we know how many people are coming forward to sign up to, say, our Microsoft training courses. And we know that they're popular and successful because we keep getting nagged to put more and more and more on. So we know that works. One thing we've been working towards is this idea of a data and analytics passport. So this is this idea of, as you complete things, you gain digital badges. And so therefore, we've then got a centralized system which you can track what badges people are getting. So we started this off quite simply by issuing our membership with a badge to get them all signed up to having a passport. And then as they join special interest community groups, they gain the badge for that special interest community group. I have one on my on my email for Fika, which is it's a Dutch thing of thinking and speaking and having coffee. It's a thought series sort of thing. If you contribute to a podcast event for them, you get a badge, special one, saying thank you for taking part. And what we're obviously aiming towards doing is getting all of our learning pathways that we have onto that system. So as people complete and go on and go off and do things and complete training, they get issued with these badges. So we then get that sort of record of how people are going through, and that can sort of help provide us some sort of data. But because most of our training material is sending people out to everybody else's different websites. So we had all of our strategic partners who are running software map their e-learning to our sort of learning pathways. So you go off onto Tableau to training, or you go off on SAS, go wherever else to do it. We can't track that type of success. So it can only really be sort of core stuff we've got on our system. One of the things we're also looking at, and this ties into what I do on a day-to-day basis, like trying to develop like a core competency for data analytics, for data science, data analysis, and data engineering in health and care. And we're then going to be moving to like format like a self-assessment tool that sits on that, which people would then be able to do and then look at and track progress on and things. But so much of what we do is just providing out to other people, that actually the route coming back into us is quite limited from that perspective. So it tends to be more people reaching out to us to say this was really helpful, or actually this wasn't very good. It's like, I found this other thing that's better. Well, that's great. That's what we want our community to do. We want them to be sending us and giving us stuff that they think is worthwhile.
Awesome, excellent. Yeah. So essentially, I mean, the feedback is pretty obvious, even if you can't always count every certification or qualification. It's very obvious that they are happening, and some you can count. So
yeah, some we can count. Obviously, a lot of our, what's the signups for the micro community sessions that will include learning? What are the signups for the training courses? What's happening for the huddles? We run that through the NHS registration systems. So we know, that was the one I ran yesterday. We know we sold out because we can't get more than 250 tickets. You can't have more than that on a Teams call, and stuff like that. So we're able to track involvement, not necessarily achievement, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
I also had a question around the involvement part. So I guess that ties in nicely. So because you have a huge community, like 17,000 people, which is awesome, because then even if like 1% joins, you've got like a huge, big crowd. But do you see a lot more people involved in the training aspect, or also in the collaboration or the huddles? Because I guess that could be a very different kind of involvement with the platform.
Yeah, so when we do track our like unique visitor hits a month, and we're up to about between 1,500 to 1,700 unique visitors in a month, which is, we're quite happy with. If we can hit that, we're quite happy with that. We'd obviously like it to be more. When we've done community drives, such as sending out the membership digital badges, we saw a suddenly upswing, because before that we were about 12 to 1,300 unique visitors a month. When we are finding that when we can come on and track what's had the most downloads, what's had the most activity, that it is both the learning material and the huddles. The other areas are really useful as like reference areas, but because they don't have the content that's changing regularly, that's, people will go on once to look at the guidance around data. They'll go on once to look at what data they can access. They're not going to be going repeatedly to that because it's not updated. Whereas things like learning and development blogs, which we can broadcast out, and the events calendar, which gets updated regularly. So we find we can sort of track that, we know that that's where that activity is going. As for the split, I mean, that is quite, we know we can track it sort of core area. We can't track it down to individual like areas and training and particular things like that. But
okay, no, makes sense. But and then maybe
we're taking.
Yeah, no, and also in terms of generating like the content, so speaking at the huddles, and well, I don't know, initiating some of these more community interactions. Is that a large amount of the champions that are organizing that, or is that also like a bigger core group of people that are collaborating on that?
Yeah. So what we have for the huddle group in particular, we have one champion who actually does support the huddles as a permanent sort of member of that, of supporting that, and she has actually run and facilitated. But we have like a core group of 3 volunteers from the central team who support the huddles and the mini huddles. So we'll have a content generating lead for the huddle and one for the mini huddles. And then we'll have like an administrator facilitator person who's responsible for events booking and things like that. And then we'll also then have our champion who also comes on to then facilitate things like actually the running of the sessions. So it's easier for her because then she only really has to come on once a week to like, and she can meet her time requirement that way. So, but yeah, it's one of those things. We don't struggle. We actually are struggling because we have more speakers who want to come on that than we have slots, because we only have like 4 slots a month, and one of those slots is a routine thing, which is Machine Learning Monday. So we actually only have 3 slots a month. So they've already advertised for things for next month, and we've got stuff that's pretty much most slots over the summer. We might have to go out and find like slots for one thing a month at the moment, but I've just booked in a slot for them in November. That's when I can get in for one of my ones. So I was like, fine.
Well, that's a good problem to have. I think that's the opposite of what most people maybe here tend to get.
I've got a question. How did you communicate this, like this community and this champions network? How did you go from 0 to 10K in 6 months?
Well, because we're very lucky. We have a collaboration platform in the NHS called Future NHS. So actually, there are many other collaboration sites on here that are closed to special interest members groups, for example. So we have one on population health, we have this and stuff. So what we were able to do was, first off, advertise this community to all the other people that were registered in communities on NHS, who, when they'd signed up, expressed an invitation and anything to do with data. So we were able to send them out an invitation to join. Now there are over 100,000 people registered at some point to use the Future NHS community, because you've got to remember, this isn't just people in the NHS, it's also people who work with the NHS. So there's lots of collaboration going on, because it's our way of being able to sort of do that in a sort of secure environment. So we're able to send it to that. Then there was a massive word of mouth that happened as a result of. And then another thing, other than the social media, which we actually only really started implementing from about August last year, my colleague and I, Alex Chung, basically, I think we went and presented to pretty much every single team in the NHS. It felt like that. We were going out and doing promos, at least 3 a week, for about 6 to 8 months. It was quite challenging, because you'd meet one person, one group of Analyst X, so Analyst X for the senior leaders for the Northeast or something. So you go on a regional event, and then people go, oh, this was really great, I'm part of this other thing, would you mind coming and presenting at our team meeting to my boss, and things like that. So we ended up jumping around quite a lot and sort of presenting directly to people. And the nice thing when you're doing that is then you can sign people up for commitments for particular things. So you then can grow the particular areas and special interests of that. So I think we've got a question that came through on the chat then. We've got a few.
So for anyone that can't see the chat, Thierry's asked.
Oh, the 12-month, yes. So yeah, so we've basically given them that we set the 12-month thing, and we have now graduated our first class out, and we've given them their thank you and their congratulations for completing the Champions Program badge. They do have specific goals that they would like sort of, so they're not sort of automatically re-enrolled. It's something that we haven't had anyone from that first 12 months who've then said, I want to stay on board as a champion. But that's why we're sort of now creating what we consider to be this other tier, which is the ambassador program. And this is this idea of, champions are very active in helping to produce the content of what's on the community. And people, some of them will then continue to be involved in that micro community as part of the micro community, maybe as a steering group member, etc. But what we're now trying to do is basically transition our graduating class of champions onto the ambassador program. So then they're basically going out and sort of taking that broader promotion role of the Champions program and the Analyst X, and sort of running with it in sort of this sort of higher tier promotion class. And we're not then asking for any particular time commitments from them. We're just, bringing them together as a group that we then can use to funnel things out through.
I had a really quick question, because when you mentioned about having different people, not just from directly the NHS, but to collaborate with NHS, or I guess NHS, London, etc. Do you include in your community kind of our data management, data governance type professionals as well? Yeah,
we do. It's anyone who has an interest in sort of data and analytics in health and care. So we will have everyone all the way through from people that on the project management side, who might have an element of data and analytics for a program that they're rolling out, that they need to look at KPIs and monitoring performance and maybe a bit of evaluation, that so sort of touch on either end of, all the way through to chief exec level people that are interested in the importance of data-driven decision making, but aren't necessarily interested in data and analytics.
Interesting. And then do you find people, do you find you're getting that collaboration between the disciplines? Because that's something I've always struggled to kind of see. The data governance person who loves a bit of analytics, the person who loves analytics but really loves all that data governance.
So you'll tend to see it more in like the comment threads where people are posing questions that will have like multidisciplinary like feed in that's needed.
Yeah.
So you'll tend to sort of see it there. It's not something, I'll be honest, that we've set anything up within the community to do other than just facilitating sort of things like that. I think because actually that type of thing is actually quite difficult to do. What, you know, in that it's much easier to go, we've got a specialist interest community, this is what the agenda we're going to run. You can structure that and formalize it. That other type of sort of networking is more about, you know, providing people a platform to allow them to do it than actually finding a really creative way to sort of facilitate it. The only thing we've thought about and we're looking at expanding is like the idea of hackathons and accelerators, where you then actually bring these people together to work in teams to solve a problem. And we've done hackathon events in the past, and that's sort of what we're looking at. But a lot of that takes a massive amount of organization that at the moment we just don't have the capacity to sort of do. Okay. Any questions from anyone else? Would anyone like to join Analyst X? You're welcome to, if you're interested in data and analytics in health and care.
That final bit that just tips me over the edge, you know. But
Health and care, but
what I will do is, if I share my screen again, and we can go to Menti, and everyone has any questions, any last minute, like dying to ask things, please just shout over me and get started. But if let me just get my screens right. If I share my screen again. Can everyone see that? It should say, let's chat with Sarah, which obviously we have just done. Thank you very much, Sarah. And then for anyone who didn't manage to join right at the beginning due to a few technical issues in the Zoom vortex, www.menti.com, and then enter the code. You can join it on your phone, on your laptop, whatever device you are using today. I'm just going to do it right now, and then let us know that you've got here okay by tapping the heart in the middle of your screen. That just lets us know that you're back with us and alive. Fabulous. We are getting the numbers in, getting all that love. Oh, green heart, that was nice. Awesome. So yeah, and this code will stay at the top of your screen throughout if you don't manage to get it immediately, but menti.com 50895283. I guess it's also worth shouting, this is totally anonymous as well. So there is nothing to be ashamed of in what you put in Menti, but please don't be too mean. So moving on to the next slide. Could you let us know how you found today's session by using the little draggers to say exactly how you feel? Ooh, got someone in.
Oh, I like the last one.
Straight to the start. It's good to see that inspiration is leading the journey rather than excessive experting, which is always handy. And as always with these sessions, they are fully collaborative. So if you do have any ideas, any bits you want to shout out about what you're doing in your community, now is 100% the time. And if you don't feel like shouting it, pop it in the chat or pop it on our Slack channel, because communities only work when everyone contributes and gives ideas, as I'm sure Sarah knows better than I do. Amazing. So then if we just move on to our final question, which is, as always, topics for the future. Does anyone have any ideas of stuff they'd love to hear about, things they'd want to collaborate with, any ideas? Also, if you know any speakers that you'd love to hear from, now's the time, as long as you know they are vaguely interested in data and are not going to cost an absolute fortune. We will try our best to get them along. So no Karen Brady's or any sports stars or anything more, just data champions all the way. Data literacy. I think we have a recording of a data literacy process event that we've done previously, which is worth checking out, but it is always good to cover these topics more and more. I guess that's another little shout out for our YouTube channel, where you can see all the recordings of our previous sessions as well. So yeah, go check them out, give us some likes, make us feel like YouTubers. Who knows, if we get some money, we might be able to afford a permanent speaker from all those YouTube ads from nobody watching. Yes, any ideas, put them in, no matter how silly they are. And you can also submit multiple responses as well. So once you've submitted once, feel free to then add more as you go. I like the exec sponsorship, but also training execs on Tableau, because what's the point in them sponsoring if they don't know what they're doing? But yes, I will also leave this Menti up for a little while, so please feel free to add any more responses. If you think of anything over your dinner or over your breakfast, wherever you are in the world, you should be able to come back and add a question, because the poll should still be live. Obviously, you can always contact us on Slack, and no matter what's going throughout the day, or we've got something in the chat. Really informative, nice. Love a bit of on the go feedback. And then yeah, if anyone has, I guess the last most important thing to say is a massive thank you to you, Sarah, for joining us and sharing your thoughts and everything. For everyone else for surviving the Zoom Zorpex, or whatever we're calling it, and managing to make it here this afternoon with us. And then yeah, join us on Slack, catch up our videos on YouTube, and we look forward to speaking to you next time. Awesome.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks everyone, and thank you, Sarah, for your patience. And,
No worries. I've been on worse.
all right, we'll take that as a challenge. You'll come back and we'll really mess it up this time.